Chapter 11 of the leadership textbook focuses on ethical leadership and followership. So, the first thing that it starts out with is the importance of ethics, where ethics refers to standards of moral conduct to judgments about whether human behavior is right or wrong. The next thing it goes into, based off of ethics, is the ethical challenges of leadership, which is titled as the casting light or shadow. So, when it comes to important information management, leaders cast more shadow than light when they lie, particularly for selfish reasons, use information for solely personal benefit, deny having knowledge that is in their possession. They gather data in a way that violates privacy rights. They withhold information that followers legitimately need. They also share information with the wrong people, as well as put followers in moral binds, insisting that they withhold information that others have a right to know. Whereas on the other hand, responsible leaders acknowledge and try to correct ethical problems, admit that they have duties to followers, promote ethical standards and behaviors. They take responsibility for consequences of their orders and actions, as well as take reasonable steps to prevent crimes and other abuses by followers. They also hold themselves to the same standards as their followers. And I think that's a big part of responsible leadership too, is to really not put yourself above others. You kind of want that mutual respect, and that's one thing that I feel like you can gain that. So the next subcategory that the chapter talks about is the challenge of power. So a leader must decide when to employ power, what types of power to use, and how much power she or he wishes to exert over followers. These decisions usually have more implications. And then there was a quote by Cornelius Tacitus, which was, "Lust for power is the most flagrant of all passions." The next thing it goes into was the challenge of privilege. And that is, positions of leadership are associated with social and material rewards. Leaders may reap social benefits such as status, privilege, and respect, as well as material benefits such as high salaries and stock options. Most would agree that leaders deserve additional privileges because they have a broader range of responsibilities than followers, but how far should the benefits extend is the real question that's asked. So the next thing it goes into was the challenge of loyalty, and that's just simply leaders have to balance a variety of loyalties or duties when making decisions. Just kind of an ethical thing too. Just you can't put one group over another. And then the next thing is the challenge of consistency. And that is, leaders deal with a variety of followers, relationships, and situations, which makes it difficult to behave consistently. If you can overcome some of those challenges and be pretty consistent with what you do, I think that will make you a very successful leader, especially from an ethical standpoint. So the next thing that the chapter talks about are the components of ethical behavior that come from James Rest. So the first component is moral sensitivity. Moral sensitivity is identifying the existence of ethical problems. We can't solve an ethical problem unless we first recognize that it first exists. The second component is moral judgment. Moral judgment is deciding which course of action identified in the first component is the right one to follow. Next, we move on to component 3, which is moral motivation. Moral motivation refers to following through on choices. The desire to do the right thing generally comes into conflict with other values like security, wealth, and social acceptance. Ethical behavior results if moral values take precedence over other considerations. And then to wrap up the components is component 4 of moral character. Moral character is the implementation stage of the model. Opposition, fatigue, distractions, and other factors are formidable barriers to ethical action. Overcoming these obstacles take persistence, and those with a strong will are more likely to persist. The next thing it goes on to based off of that is ethical perspectives. And big thing of that was Kant's categorical imperative, but then also utilitarianism, justice as fairness, virtue ethics, and altruism. And then the next thing that the chapter goes on to is kind of based around the fact of leaders as servants. And it gives a bunch of rights that you have to have. So it's a right to be needed, a right to be involved, a right to covenantal relationship, a right to understand, right to affect one's own destiny, also the right to be accountable, the right to appeal, and then the right to make a commitment. The next thing going off of that was servant leadership, or servant followership, excuse me. So that's pretty much his followers owe the following to their leaders and institutions, which include understanding the institution and its goals, customers, and limitation, take responsibility for personal goals, be loyal to the idea behind the organization even when not in agreement with all of the organization's goals and procedures, resist fear of the new and also the unknown, understand the values of others as members of the group and their contributions, make a personal commitment to be open to change, and then also to build constructive relationships. To wrap up this chapter, it talks about courageous followership. And that is simply the courage to assume responsibility, the courage to serve, the courage to challenge, the courage to participate in transformation, and then also the courage to leave. So that's pretty much chapter 11 in a nutshell. Um, Pretty simple stuff, honestly. When being a leader, you have to really put your ethics and your morals first to be successful and to really have a strong following that you wish to have. And just to have everyone on board and having good ethics and good morals is one thing that will really make it easier for people to follow you as a leader. So, yeah, that's chapter 11, ethical leadership and followership.